Hi, welcome to another episode of Through the Web. Today we'll be talking about the Silicon Valley collapse, the Credit Suisse situation, GPT-4, and what's going on with these fake photos of the moon from Samsung. It's going to be a good episode, so let's get into it.
What a week.
Huge, absolutely huge. Financial stuff, technology stuff, all going crazy. Absolutely.
Usually we start with a personal story, but this week I think we should just
go straight into
jump
it.
right in. No time for what we watched this week.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we watched anything this week, did we?
Yeah, well, apart from that.
The actual stuff related to work.
Okay, so I guess maybe we'll start with maybe the SVB scandal.
Maybe. Yeah, this little thing that you might have heard that happened.
Yeah, so Silicon Valley Bank, obviously I think everyone watching would have heard about it by now and known what happened, but essentially a bunch of horrible mismanagement led to a bank run and then a collapse of a bank that basically funded 50% of all VC startups in the United States. So a whole tens of thousands of companies are affected in terms of getting payroll to their staff, running day-to-day operations. And it's a huge shake-up of that industry. So right now, a few days ago, the government decided to bail out SVB. And so they're insuring all the deposits to make sure everyone gets their money. But the thing is, we're not sure how long that's going to take. And the longer you leave it, the greater the risk of these companies starting to have financial issues. So it's quite a sad situation for the tech industry.
Yeah, and also the timeline of it as well, because we usually shoot our podcast episodes on Friday. And I remember just going back home, because usually the way we work with our Cold Fusion team now is that we prep for new topics coming up, and we've got a small team of researchers and editors who help Dagogo out. But essentially, I reached out to one of the writers and said, "Hey, we've got a few topics coming up. Do you mind just having a look at them?" And then he goes back, "Oh, is it about the Silicon Valley Bank crash?" I'm like, "Oh, what do you mean?" Like, "Oh, haven't you seen the news?" And it's like, I just Googled it. I'm like, "Oh God, here comes a few sleepless nights." And I immediately sent a text to Dagogo, and it's like, "Yep, it's not looking good." I think I just showed you the graph.
Yeah,
that's it. It's like just pasted the graph of the SVB just tanking, and it's like, "Yep, it's time for a new video."
Yeah.
And I think we went to it.
I saw that quite soon to when it happened on Twitter, but then I had another friend text me about that earlier in the day saying, "Have you seen this? What the hell's going on?" I was like, he's like, "Oh, should I take my money out of the bank?" I was like, "Oh, not yet, but keeping an eye on it."
Yeah.
But it was absolute pandemonium. People, because I think if the Federal Reserve and the Treasury and all of that didn't step in, it would have been a complete disaster, horrendous.
I agree. And I guess for those, it's unlikely if you listen to this, you don't know what happened. But if you don't know what happened, do check out the video that Cold Fusion did on this that came out a couple of days ago. Great video. I know it sounds biased because we made it, but very, very helpful for anyone who wants to understand the whole thing in 30 minutes or less. So for those who do know what happened, it's just us recapping the timeline. So, I think it was early, probably March 8th or 9th when things started slowly taking the whole, I guess, snowball started to get bigger. Silvergate Capital, which was a crypto-based bank, they said that they were going to stop all operations and liquidate all of their assets, and then that forced them to start selling a chunk of its debt securities. And then basically around the same time, SVB consulted investors when it said that they need to shore up its balance sheets and raise $2 billion in capital, which was on the same day. And then it forced to sell a bond portfolio at a $1.8 billion loss. And that started sending alarm bells, right? And around the same time, the CEO of SVB, which is Greg Becker, previously involved with certain other famous entities.
It was the CAO. CAO, Chief Accounting Officer or something like that. He was Lehman, not Becker.
Right. Okay. But yeah, he said that the bank enjoyed the financial position to weather the sustained market pressures, but he said that the customer deposits had come in lower than forecast in February. And essentially that started having a little bit of a panic shockwave happening. And then on March 9th, when he basically said the VC firms to stay calm, is when things started getting loose, because when you tell someone to stay calm, they typically don't. And it was, a note that he had sent out. But basically that sent the whole thing into spiral, where the announcement sent the stock plummeting to 60%.
Wasn't just that, everyone was pulling their money out as well.
Exactly.
In a single day, $42 billion got withdrawn. And I think someone was comparing it to the 2008 financial crisis, where that kind of amount, lost or withdrawn or whatever, that was in a matter of like weeks. So this was just,
within a day or so.
Yeah.
And obviously, again, the reasons behind why it was all happening is explained in the Cold Fusion video. But essentially the aftermath of that, why a lot of people felt that this was almost an extinction level event, because so many of these startups are reliant and dependable on this bank. Again, no fault of their own, because as you mentioned at the start of the video, that on Forbes it was the 20th biggest bank.
They've been around since 1983. So
exactly, very stable, highly regulated,
But the thing is, a lot of short sellers and some other financial commentators had been eyeing off SVB before this all happened. So they knew that their business model wasn't exactly strong, but it wasn't mainstream knowledge. It was only the people that were really looking at the bank that could see that.
Except Jim Cramer.
He's unbelievable. Theranos, Lehman Brothers, Merrill Lynch, all like every single disaster.
The next video that we should do ahead of time to avoid sleepless nights is just look at what he tips off next, and just start prepping. Start prepping whatever Jim Cramer says. But jokes aside, as tensions rose and people started withdrawing money. The reason why people were thinking this would be such a big deal is because, as you mentioned, like all the startups depended on this bank to not only do the payrolls, but all the VC money is there. So essentially the entire startup ecosystem would be under threat. And I think what people are trying to, people are not trying to understand is that this is not big tech money. This is the small 10 to 100 people companies who are either working on something really cool or innovative, and maybe 2 or 3 of these 100, 200 companies would end up becoming the next Amazon or something. So you're essentially looking at the potential of these startups to really be halted at a level for a reason that is not their own fault.
Yeah.
And I think when the government stepped in, a lot of people was, oh, here we go again, the typical, capitalism until you need to get bailout, and then it's socialism, right? But the truth is, in this case specifically, it's not, and it shouldn't be for the execs who made this stuff happen, who didn't care about risk management, who didn't care about how to really run a bank, but more so for these startups and the real human beings who work there for their next payroll, right? Because and it's not just even startups. There are like a lot of innovative, HR companies or payroll companies who then also service other industries, right? So the shockwave of this would have been like immense. And you're right. And I think if the federal government didn't step in, it actually would have been a very serious threat to essentially America's next 10, 15, 20 years of innovation.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, because it was so highly concentrated in this innovative sector, it was like a bomb would have just gone off and decimated the future, essentially. But some people were kind of joking that because interest rates were so low, it turns out that a lot of these companies didn't have great ideas, and VCs were just throwing money at it anyway because it's like, we got money to spend, let's do it. But I don't really buy that completely. I think obviously that some of these guys are doing some great stuff. So I'm glad the bailout happened, but I'm not sure what the up-to-date minute-second progress of that is, because it will take quite a bit of time to get, whatever hundreds of billions of dollars into where it's supposed to be. So I think the Fed's balance sheet yesterday went up by 300 billion. So they're doing something, but where how is it going to be effective in a timely fashion? So I have a friend who's in Silicon Valley, and he messaged me on LinkedIn saying, thanks for the video and everything. I know a lot of people have been affected by this around me, and I got another comment saying that there was a guy that got laid off already because of this. So I don't think the shock and the implications are over yet. It's going to take a little time to shake out.
But it's good to see that. What was interesting was when we found the news, it was on a Friday, or at least when these things started happening, it was on a Friday, right? So essentially, over the weekend, when markets are off, the offices are closed, people were just waiting for Monday, and I think that was I could feel the tension.
Yeah.
That, oh my God, what's gonna happen when the markets open, right?
Yeah.
And I think again, like some quick thinking with the government, and this is where you need like the government support, no matter what anyone says. Look, I'm not gonna go there, but these are the cases where you do look at and think that there is a symbiosis of innovation, of government support, of human beings, of startups. Like everything is a product of a well honing society, right? And if one of those things break, everything else is impacted, right?
But I think the Federal Reserve and the Treasury, they made a bit of an error because they said all banks who may be in trouble have their deposits guaranteed. So it's kind of put a bit of a moral hazard now in the system because bank managers can be like, hey, we can do whatever we want. We can do cartwheels. We can invest in Dogecoin at 10 billion times leverage because if we go bankrupt, hey, government's got our back.
And you're right in saying that how some of these VCs and the whole startup, and all the startup culture as well is, like raising funds is a milestone, and as it should be in some cases of progress for the company itself. Like it's an indication of success to an extent, but it became a celebration, right? Every time you raise funds, it's like, oh, like that's it. I can just burn through that until the next one, and the next one will come. And the way a lot of these VCs were operating, that they were just, as you said, they're just handing out checks left, right, and center. And this expectation that they gave a lot of the startups is also, caused that bubble in some ways, or how the impact would have been a lot more severe, right? So those are the practices I think hopefully now will change a little bit, where people are a little bit more cautious. It's just not free money just coming in.
Look, you say that, but then as soon as the Fed reduces interest rates again, then everyone's going to start investing in stupid
pretty
stuff
much doing
again.
the same thing. And I think that's where I also I understand why some people are hesitant about the Feds bailing them out, because there needs to be a lesson at some point with these banks and then with these execs and VCs who think they're just free money and then just do whatever they want, right? But going forward, though, it does feel like there hopefully will be some sort of safeguards against events like this, because of course after the 2008 financial crisis, there were so many things that were put into place so that doesn't happen again.
The laws have been weakened now.
Exactly.
But I guess another thing is, I think what a lot of people don't realize is, yes, the Fed's not using taxpayer money directly to bail them out, but in a way, like everyone pays in the US anyway, everyone's going to pay for it with inflation, because that's the Fed's printed $300 billion and that's got to be repaid, that debt. So, it ends up affecting everyone for some stupid mistakes that a couple of CEO and a missing chief risk officer did at this Silicon Valley bank. So the whole situation, quite unfortunate, quite sudden. No one was expecting it. And then it had the unfortunate effect of a bank run in multiple different areas of similar banks. So these regional banks in the United States, their stocks are kaput. They've fallen by quite a distance. And then they did start to recover, but then Credit Suisse. Then Credit Suisse came out and said that there was some issues with their revenue, that there was some fundamental weakness, and then from that announcement, then the Saudi Arabian investors said that they're not going to put any more in, and Credit Suisse has been in trouble it's been like falling in slow motion for the past 5 years. Essentially, they've had scandal after scandal. They've paid tens of billions or maybe even, I'm not sure of the number, or maybe even 100 billion or more in fines because they've just been doing silly stuff. And they I think there was a $142 billion loss over 2022 that they recorded. So the bank's not in a good state. And this latest announcement was just a trigger that caused that stock to fall 32%, I think, in that day. And people are just kind of wondering what's going to happen with the bank because, you know, it's not looking good. And then the Swiss National Bank, or their central bank, came out and cashed in $54 billion for liquidity support. And Credit Suisse actually says I can't remember what they said. Something like, we support or welcome with open arms the support of the Swiss National Bank. It's like, did they proof this? Like, it's very strange. But essentially it's an unhealthy bank. But if that goes, now that is way worse than Silicon Valley Bank. That they're completely intertwined in the global financial system on an exponentially higher degree than Silicon Valley Bank. So we've got to make sure that doesn't happen. But I think with Silicon Valley Bank, with Silvergate Bank, with these smaller regional banks in the United States, and then Credit Suisse, all happening within the last couple of days, it seems like, you know, everyone's kind of wondering, is there a problem with the system, with the banking system in general? And I think that's something that we don't know yet. But if 2008 taught us anything, a little thing over here can kind of snowball later. So I think everyone's quite vigilant, and central banks around the world, they're not waiting like they did in 2008. I think when something happens, they swoop in straight away because they're scared of a risk of contagion or something going wrong. So whether that's good or bad, I think it's bad in the long run, but good for the short term. Because I think if you just let them collapse, the risk is so high because we've had all this instability for so long that it's going to be, as in like weakness, like fragility in the system because of these low interest rates. You have investments in things that aren't good, things that were once worth money, and that low interest rate environment aren't anymore. So it's probably better to provide a little bit of aid at the moment.
As you were saying it, I was just thinking where it can actually end up with the 2008 situation. Everyone's almost having a PTSD situation right now, and it seems like with these banks almost falling apart within the same week, everyone's concerned, and it'll also impact the interest rates now for so many countries.
You would think so. So the ECB, like everyone was expecting, so the projection for the ECB, so the European Central Bank, was to raise rates by 50 basis points, or like 0.5%. And then when Credit Suisse had all these problems, and the SVB, everyone's like, there's no way they're going to do that. It's going to be 25 basis points or standstill. But they raised it by 50 basis points. So I think the Fed may look at that and be like, well, maybe things aren't that bad. Maybe the crisis is fixed. We're going to raise as well.
Oh, no.
So everyone's waiting on the Fed and what they do. But I think that was surprising, the ECB deciding to
I didn't
raise.
know that.
Yeah. So that happened yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
I was hoping they're going to hold, let's take a breather.
The commentators on CNBC were seeing it live, and they were like, is that right? Is that correct? I'm seeing 50 basis points, like, 3 okay. And he took off his glasses and I was like, what? So yeah, I think inflation is still number one, because I think what they're thinking is we can patch up all the holes that happen with liquidity, but we still have to get inflation down. So they're going to raise rates and spend money, which is kind of pressing the brake and the accelerator at the same time. But I think that looks like what they're going to do. So I don't know. I don't know what's worse, inflation or a banking collapse and a bailout. That's the choice.
like two of the lesser of the evils at this stage.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think the difference with 2008 is that they're going to step in a lot quicker. Yeah. That's what they've shown. So. Yeah.
So just going forward, looking at all this stuff, do you think another global financial crisis is that?
That's hard to say, but I think recession, yes, definitely. I think we're already in one. Not technically, but it feels like it. But financial crisis. I don't know. If I was a betting man, I'd say I'd say that there's a probability of that, because I think when you're seeing this kind of things, there's a lot of other stuff under the surface that, it's like FTX was doing stuff, no one knew about it until it blew up, and then SVB was doing stuff no one knew until it blew up. So there's probably things like that lurking out there. But I guess, maybe just everyone invest in safety assets, and then they'll rise when things go bad. So yeah, but that's just my.
I mean, have you been paying attention to the crypto numbers this week? Yeah.
So that was surprising to me because obviously Silvergate was to do with crypto.
Yes.
And I'm not sure what it's saying because this is a risk-off environment. Everyone wants to avoid risky bets, but I was thinking that crypto was one of the riskiest bets at all. But unless it's a coincidence, it seems like crypto was a safety play. So I don't know if it was in institutional investors or if it was like the casual investor saying, hey, like I want to get my money out of banks. I got to find somewhere to put it, crypto, which is shocking if that is the case, but I don't know why that was, but it's very interesting, extremely interesting to see it behave that way. Gold also took
that makes sense.
Yeah. Gold is like the safety play, the traditional one, and so were bonds. So, but the crisis was in the bond market as well. So it's kind of interesting. So don't invest in crypto. Not saying that, but it was very interesting to see Bitcoin go up.
I mean, cash is king.
Cash, inflation eats it away.
Blankets on mattresses. Yeah, I think that's probably
Beanie Babies are where it's at, man.
But you do have some additional news on FTX situation.
I do. A little bit of scant news. So there has been a lawsuit against the YouTubers that actually promoted the FTX situation. So like Graham Stephan, Meet Kevin, and a few that crew, that financial investment
Andre Jake.
Andre Jake was another one. That kind of like a property/financial, and that for some reason they're all in that
niche.
Bubble. So they were heavily promoting FTX during its rise from like 2020 onwards, and obviously FTX, we all know about that disaster. So a lawsuit has been launched by some people who have been burnt by this and took the investment advice of these YouTubers, class action lawsuit, and they are looking for $1 billion worth of damages from this. There's only probably 10 defendants or something or less. So
and all YouTubers.
Oh
man.
So interestingly, because this was posted on Twitter by none other than Coffeezilla, but then he was like, Coffeezilla was saying, I'd love to get the opinion of Legal Eagle and see what he thinks of it. And Legal Eagle said that actually the thing about this case is that it was a copy and paste of the Tom Brady, etc., celebrity. So it had the same lawyers, same everything. So I don't know what that means, if it's good or bad, or if that means it's illegitimate or it isn't, but it was a actual lawsuit, but I don't know what that means if it's a copy and paste. Maybe it's just easier to do it that way. But if it does indeed go ahead, it's going to be expensive for those YouTubers. Extremely expensive.
Dude, the whole FTX thing, right? Obviously, when it happened, you covered it deeply, and we saw how essentially everyone was fooled. And it seems to me like when...
Sorry, I just have a point on that. Sorry to interrupt, but I'll just say it now. So Coffeezilla actually interviewed or tried to ask for comment from all of these YouTubers, and Meet Kevin was the only one that responded. So he did a quick 30-second video in his car, and his argument was essentially, it's not our responsibility to do the due diligence of the customers or our audience. Our audience should do their due diligence in what they're looking at, and then it's kind of out of our hands kind of thing. But I thought that was quite a weak argument. It's I get it, everyone who's using their own money to invest in something should do their research, but I don't know, the person who's promoting this thing, they're probably saying a whole bunch of good things about it, which will probably shape your opinion before you even go into it. So I think there is at least some part to be of responsibility for these YouTubers who have done the promotion of such a product. So I didn't really agree with that, but what do you think?
I was actually going to touch on that point because I kind of land on where what he's saying, in the sense that if you don't know about what the company is going through in terms of, if they're a scam or if they're at least, because there's a few companies just know that publicly, even the whole NFT kind of situation, those were promoting those on coins and that just pump and dump situation. You could tell that most of it was unstable, and promoting them as YouTubers, definitely gray, shady area, right? For a company that again is being endorsed by celebrities, by big names, has Super Bowl commercials, in fact they even had a stadium named after them. Those, once you see those things happening, right, it establishes a sense of credibility, which allows YouTubers and creators like ourselves even to think, you know what, like the big players are saying it's okay and they're playing with this product.
So if Jim Cramer says it, it's got to be good.
It's like, you know, of course, I think before you do talk about a product on your content or you promote and you take money for it, of course, it's important that you do your due diligence to an extent. But when it's being backed by every other player in the industry, big credible names, the level of your own due diligence also kind of slows down. And it's the same for customers who also buy into it, right? Because they're saying, oh, you know, like that person's using it and he's a big name, and that person, because it's less likely to be a scam in that case versus a random YouTuber with a history of always putting out scams is pushing like a coin on Twitter, right?
Yeah, and that is very true. Like at the time, almost no one knew, because think about it from your point of view. You see me, Kevin's videos, like, oh, look, FTX is a partner. We've been with them for a year, etc. And you're like, okay, let me look at this company. Do a Google search. It's like, oh, Tom Brady. Oh, look at this ad with Tom Brady and everything. Oh, look, like they've got a stadium. And then, you know, already that's almost enough. It's like such massive things that you're like, you know, couldn't.
There's no way.
So I think that's a very specific case that was just, I think Sam Bankman-Fried just was brilliant at lying and pulling the wool over everyone's eyes. It was like Elizabeth Holmes was here, but SBF was here. So I do understand that, it's hard to just, even for those YouTubers to do their due diligence.
It goes both ways, in my opinion. I think, yes, the partial responsibility does fall on YouTubers in terms of doing their own due diligence, but also for customers, as I mentioned, that they have to also research before buying into any of that stuff. But again, having said that, in this specific case, for both parties, there was no way of knowing. And then how do you even find out about these things, right? There was no news. There's no insider like stuff. Nobody's talking about it except maybe CoffeeZilla. He's the only one who had a little bit of hunch. But again, like how do you even verify that? It's just another YouTuber, despite having a good track record of exposing these things. You can't just take that as the word.
So
right?
What do you think will happen for this lawsuit? Obviously, we're not lawyers, but just your guess.
I don't think it'll go all the way where the ones who want money will get that $1 billion or stuff.
But do you think there'll be some damages awarded?
I think there will be some, but again, I'm not sure if the YouTubers will have to directly pay it out of their pockets specifically, because there's again. Like I'm not again well versed on these kind of stuff. Definitely Devin from Legal Deal would be the ones to ask these questions. But my thought is everyone was fooled. Every single person was fooled. And in a case like that where it's very specific, it really shouldn't be the responsibilities of 10 YouTubers, for example, to pay the damages for the wrongdoing of one extremely fraud human being.
Yeah, a good way of putting it. I think it's going to be a hard case to win completely. But I do see on the YouTuber sides, they do have a lot of defense that they could pull at. But also, I don't know if the prosecution does well enough.
I mean that is opposed to what, for example, Logan Paul did with CryptoZoo, right? In his case, he didn't take out profit from that, but then he had other players within the team who were taking out profits and taking out money, right? But in this case, I agree that Logan Paul, because he was the owner of this whole thing and he was pioneering it, talking about it constantly, he should be the one responsible.
He made
paying,
the product.
Exactly. So in paying back, like that's a different scenario versus if, for example, Logan, not Europa, but in the case of FTX, again, two different kind of similar situation that I don't really think falls on the YouTubers' lap because essentially it's just another big company. That's the whole YouTube model, right? Yeah. Now, for example, there are so many other big names like Squarespace and Skillshare and all that stuff. They continuously put out sponsored slots for YouTubers. How are you supposed to know what Squarespace is up to, right? What their balance sheets look like? And
well, what you could do is you could ask ChatGPT 4.
Oh, segue.
And it will tell you everything. So this is another thing we got happening right now.
I mean, to be fair, it did pass the bar exam.
Yes.
It not only passed, aced it.
So
aced it.
There was a chart that was shown. I'm pretty sure it came from the paper. But the bar exam, for those who don't know, is like a, I guess, competence test for lawyers and the legal profession. And ChatGPT 3 scored in the lowest 10 percentile. I think lowest 10 percentile above a pass or something like that. But then GPT 4 was in the highest. It was the highest 90%. So the graphs looked like that different.
Yeah.
Like it was crazy.
Sorry, I think you said ChatGPT 4. I think ChatGPT scored in the 10% and GPT 4 scored in the...
Yeah, sorry, GPT 4, yeah. So, you know, that this is the hockey stick moment. We've all known it. It's just, you know, a couple of months' time will be so much more better. But, so for those who don't know, GPT-4 has just come out, been announced. They've done a paper on it. They've gone on a bit of a video tour on YouTube talking about some of the differences between the previous version and now. And I guess the number one difference between both systems is the multimodal nature of GPT-4. So that means that it can input not only text, but images, and it can understand images. It can analyze an image, tell you what's going on. It can even analyze images and tell you why it's funny or not, if it's a meme or not. So two great examples was a hand-drawn sketch of a website. It's just, you know, on a piece of paper, took a photo of it, put it in GPT-4, and then it builds HTML website from it. And you know, it's just at that point, just like, what do we do now?
It's just watching it and you talking about it, it's goosebumps, honestly. Yeah. It's incredible.
Yeah. And another might as well be. Another scene was essentially a fridge of just full of fruits and various other things. Take a photo of it, and then put it into GPT-4. What recipes can I cook with this, and what food? And then it gives you a bunch of recipes. And so obviously that's extremely hard. It's recognized each of the objects, how much of them there are, then gone to its knowledge base, pulled out what you could do in terms of food and cooking, and then given it to you. And that's like would have been impossible 3 years ago.
I remember, because I've got a bit of, you know, I don't want to say entrepreneurial brain in the loosest terms, but I do always think of, you know, the next Uber, the next idea. You know, everyone goes through that phase where what could be a next idea? I remember in my university days, actually, in my dorm room, right? You know, the dorm days where you'd have like just scraps of random foods on your cupboard, and you just want to make something up, right? And I still remember this very clearly, because I think I wrote it down as one of my ideas that I want to make some days. That, okay, you know, I've got that and that, you know, 3 random things. What can I make out of it, right? At that time, obviously, Google is just very basic. You only got those random recipes that you might, or even just YouTube tutorials, but you have to be very specific in typing, I need this, right? I thought, what if there was an app I just put in these 3 things and it'll give me a recipe, right? Then I thought, that's actually not that hard to build. And then I thought of, you know, I've never pursued it because, you know, by the time I even thought about it, I'm sure other people were also kind of doing the same thing. And I think a few years down the line, there was an app that did that, where you just input, okay, I've got this, and this. What are the few recipes that I can make out of it? And that entire thing is now obsolete because you can just take a picture.
But the thing is, that's like 1 trillionth of what it can do.
Exactly.
It's just,
and when I looked at it, I was
it's like trivial.
Wow.
It's like, that's trivial for it. So essentially everyone's going bananas. It's been out for a few days at the time of recording, and there's people that are just like taking it, pushing it through its paces and coming up with amazing ideas. And this is before it's even released. And we'll get back to that, but just at the same time, Midjourney version 5 has come out. And now, like, Midjourney version 4 was great, but you could always tell they were AI images because they had this kind of feel about it.
Yes.
But 5 seems to mostly have gotten rid of that. So it's quite photorealistic. Like, there's been so many different examples where it's like, which one is real, which one is fake, and people have been getting it wrong. And then people have been posting real pictures and then saying, is this AI or not? And then people are like, oh, it's definitely AI, but it's a real picture. Like, we don't know anymore. So it's, and of course, this is the worst it will ever be. It's going to get better from here. So this week has been wild for AI. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, with GPT-4, again, it's they said it's more accurate and it's better advanced reasoning capabilities and safer too. That's one aspect that, you know, and safer as well. Safe.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
with Bing, apparently it was just running GPT-4 all along.
I heard about that.
So like these guys sneaking in GPT-4, right? But then that begs the question: is that people have been able to break?
Yeah, but the thing is, I like, in terms of interacting and talking, I like GPT-3 better because
interesting.
4, it's just so unless so now you have the 3 allocations. You have accurate, balanced, and then creative. I find the creative one to give you more stuff, and it's still quite accurate. So, I just
I'm here to try it, but again, just going back to the statement that that the company said, they spent 6 months making GPT-4 safer and more aligned. GPT-4 is 82% less likely to respond to requests for disallowed content and 40% more likely to produce factual responses than GPT 3.5 on their internal findings. Some companies are already embedding it in their products. So Duolingo, the language learning app, an app for blind people called Be My Eyes, the payment company Stripe, education company Khan Academy, and of course Bing Chat. They've been embedding and integrating it for their consumer-facing products. The companies are also using it for from visual recognition of objects to text to organization of corporate knowledge, language training, basic training, all that kind of stuff. So very, very cool stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is incredible just to think where it can go next. And
so I'm just still waiting though on that voice assistant. It's so simple now. Like the technology is there; it's been there for a long time. But someone just needs to do it, and then that will be like, just having it talk to you would just be another level. Don't you agree? Do you think so?
No, for sure. And it's the same week as well where Google also announced and it's interesting, and I brought this up before we started recording, because Google also announced their version of integrating AI into worksheets within the workspace. The demo looked very good as compared to their initial presentation in Paris a couple of weeks back. So that, again, when I saw that, I was like, I'm a big Google Drive user. I use docs, sheets all the time. And again, that was like awesome. Like, this is exactly what we needed. And then GPT-4 came out in the same week.
No. So, Tawsif texted me. He was like, oh, look at this Google thing. And I was like, oh, that looks awesome. And then I was on Twitter and I was like, dude, I was like, well. And then like GPT-4 just dropped, like maybe 50 seconds. It was Sam Altman's tweet.
Yeah,
so it was like right at the same time. So I don't know if someone from either company knew that they were going to do something. There must have been some kind of crosstalk going on there.
I mean, as you aptly described it in your video, it is it's almost like an AI war, like an arms race, right? But the Google's announcement actually helped them jump up the stock by 3.14. Oh, pi. 3.14%. So that again, tells us that Google's definitely not out of the game. Obviously, initially we talked about it and how they were trying to catch up. But again, I think we also mentioned at that time that it's going to take a lot more for any company to really take these big companies out of the game, and it seems like even Apple, they're working on something that's similar. According to a few just side news that we spoke about this as well, right? Like they're just looking at it, sitting back, taking it all in.
But if you really think about it, they don't need to do anything.
No,
like they could actually literally just use OpenAI's API. Integrate it into a great product, and there you go. They don't have to do the hard work and the research. Maybe a bit of machine learning in terms of hardware, or maybe how it interfaces with their Apple hardware, but minimal compared to
doing that. I think I know companies often use other companies' products or even white labeling them while integrating it into their own stuff. I don't know how much Apple would want to do that because it's owned by Microsoft, isn't that? OpenAI is owned by Microsoft.
Yeah, so it's true. It's
that's
like
the only
two
thing.
Arch enemies. Either take it from Google or Microsoft, but I don't know. I think they're going to have to pay for it. Like Microsoft isn't going to give it to Apple for free.
No.
But
especially if they white label it,
where
they're not going to mention that we're using tech by Microsoft. Keeping that hush would
it's going to cost them
money.
But I don't know. Maybe Apple is working on something. Maybe they just have some very smart researchers that are looking at the research papers and taking different ideas and going to integrate that. But in the latest thing, after Google did the first hit and then Microsoft did the second one, Microsoft came back again and they've actually talked about integrating all the ChatGPT things into the Office suite. I don't know if you heard about that.
I mean, that was expected.
Yeah.
We kind of predicted that. Well, the very first thing, in fact, I remember a month, I mean, it feels like ages ago, but it's only been like a month or so since this all started happening. We mentioned that, okay, what are the things where, because Microsoft spent, I think, $10 billion at the time on OpenAI, where could they start using it? And the first thing we mentioned was the Office suite. And we also mentioned a potentially hardware specific thing. And going back to your question, which is how can the next side of things come through this innovation with the voice assistant stuff? I don't know, man. I think that's again would be the next stuff.
We'll keep your eyes peeled.
Before moving into the next topic, I just want to ask you: have you seen anything about the Oscars?
Yeah, I did.
First of all, it's been a year since the slap. Wow, it doesn't feel like it. It's been a year, so much so that even Chris Rock dropped an original on Netflix talking about the slap.
Yeah,
it's been a year almost since.
That's insane. Yeah, that blew my mind. I had no idea. Well, it makes sense, Oscars, yeah. But obviously, you're probably going to talk about Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Absolutely.
But I saw something interesting. Guess what? To edit that show, or that that movie, they used Premiere.
That's exactly what I'm going to talk about.
Oh, damn.
Not just that. 10 Oscar-nominated films were entirely done on Premiere Pro.
I don't know how they do it, man. All the crashes, all the slowdowns.
10 Oscar nominated, and of them, I think 3 or 4 of them won Oscars. So Top Gun was one of them.
Top Gun was edited on Premiere.
Yes,
oh my God.
Fully, and they won for Best Sound Design. I think Avatar was also entirely on Premiere Pro, Best for Visual Effects. And of course, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Best Editing. I
saw the timeline of that. It was like,
yes.
It was crazy.
And they did this have you seen the movie?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, loved it. It's crazy how we never spoke about it until now.
I don't know.
I don't think we spoke about it.
Yeah,
no.
I don't think we did.
My friend, when he first saw it, and he told me to watch it like straight away. Like he'd type, watch it. And I'm like, yeah. And he always recommends me stuff, and I'm like, and usually his taste is very good. So I was like, yeah, I'll watch it. And then eventually I did, and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And of course, it deserves all the accolades it's been getting. But it's only a 5-person editing team.
5-person?
Yes. So they did all the visual effects, all on Premiere Pro, and an old MacBook as well. So
that's how they did it.
That's a free advertisement for Adobe, for Apple.
But it kind of makes me sad though, because all of this good publicity for Premiere Pro, it's going to make Adobe think, hey, we don't need to change anything.
That's right.
We're still number one. Number one, baby.
But I think there is a shift
20-year-old
happening.
code base.
There's still a shift happening with a lot of people trying to move to DaVinci Resolve, right? I've been seeing that a lot lately. YouTubers talking about it. So I'm sure they'll be on their toes unless they're kind of getting ready to acquire.
So this is according to Sarah Dietschy, who's a YouTuber. Yes. Yeah. She talked with people in Adobe, and apparently they can't do anything or don't really want to do anything with the fundamental problems because it's the oldest code base that they have in there. So it's like 20 something years old.
They can do something.
It's just a stack of code. They don't know who's done what back in the day.
They know you know what they can do?
What?
Get Elon Musk as their CEO, get rid of half of the staff,
and
then rewrite the entire code from scratch. That's how Adobe will win the world.
It's like what?
The first software to be used in Mars. Editing software.
So you probably by that time you end up with like just one video stream and one audio stream. Anything more than that or crashes or something.
Yeah. Well,
but look, yeah, Premiere. It's actually I've had no problems since I switched to Mac.
So maybe it's not Adobe that's the problem.
Oh, it is. It is. I know plenty of people on Mac.
Yeah, I've had it crashed just on a video I was working on just a few days ago. So
yeah. But some of the errors that it gives and stuff that it does is just nonsensical. What's one? Oh, there's this thing where if you press full screen for like the video, so it's like kind of in the titles area. But anyway, if you press the full screen for this, it goes full screen, but there's no way to get it off. It's a bug, and like it hasn't been fixed for like 5 years. So you have to restart Premiere if you want. No. It's just like, Why?
And the threads also online aren't very helpful at times because sometimes they'll just end and it's like, yeah, it's resolved. And it's like, no, it's not resolved.
Yeah. And then Adobe will be like, yeah, restart the software, blah, blah, blah. And everyone's like, that doesn't fix anything. It's like case closed.
The case resolved. There's a reason why DaVinci's called it the resolve, because they're going to resolve everything that Adobe can't.
Right.
So that's probably the reason.
Yeah.
Brayden's just there, just smirking. It's like, do you use Resolve yet? Have you used Resolve yet?
I've been using it for like half my projects.
Yeah, and
Premiere is better for I'm using it for the podcast stuff.
Yeah.
Because I'm quick with editing on it.
Right.
But Resolve for any creative project seems to be better.
So Resolve, he didn't have the mic up, so he says that Resolve was better for creative projects, but for the more kind of podcast stuff, the Premiere Pro seems to be okay for now anyway. Okay, well, we'll see how we go with that. All right, the next story, more layoffs at Meta. And the way I found out was my notification ticker came up saying that is Meta the next AOL? Remember AOL?
Well, I never used it.
Yeah.
Actually, I did. Well, my family did have it. Like we had it for a little while, yeah.
It would have been like the first few years of the personal computer revolution, right?
Yeah. Well, PC revolution was the 80s. Like, it's the internet revolution.
Internet revolution, yeah. So more so there. So, so for those who don't know, Meta are set to cut 10,000 more jobs, and they have put 5,000 vacancies at the firm left unfilled. So basically, this is on top of the 11,000 employees that they laid off in November, and it's all part of a year of efficiency that Mark Zuckerberg had said, and he said that it would be tough. And I remember covering this story early or mid last year, where he had kind of came out with a piece or an address to the public saying what their plans are for the year, for the next financial year, and they did mention that this year would be getting tough. Had an internal memo going out saying that things will not be as smooth as they used to be. So and we're kind of seeing the repercussions of that take shape. And this also came on the same week where they mentioned that they're also winding down on NFTs for Facebook and Instagram.
Oh no way! I thought that was their core business. Yeah.
And the thing was, just calling them digital collectibles wasn't enough to save it either. Because I remember, like, I don't know if it's still there, but on Instagram, if you go into that account setting, there is that thing that says digital collectibles. Never clicked on it. Never seen anyone use it on my Instagram feed, at least. So that's also kind of taking things down. So in Meta's Q4 2022 earnings call on February 1, Zuckerberg said the major technological waves driving the roadmap are AI and over the longer term, the metaverse, and that the priorities haven't changed since last year. This was in February 1st, which is a month and a half ago, and they've laid off so many people. So that begs the question, like, is the metaverse still on for Meta?
Oh, I think Zuckerberg's sticking to that, but I think I said this in my Meta video and on this podcast, like the risk is how far away is this reality? If it's 2 years' time to 5 years' time at the most, maybe that's okay. But if it's in 10 years' time, I don't think investors are going to stick around. No. It's a very big gamble for him to make. But then again, like what was he going to do? Because obviously the core Facebook audience was dribbling away. Instagram's not what it used to be. So he kind of had two choices. We could go the AR, VR route, or we could go towards AI, but he chose kind of the wrong route. Kind of turned the wheel at the wrong time. So now he's kind of stuck in this thing where he's changed the name of the company. He's really going for it. So they got to start making something happen soon, because this metaverse thing, it's a disaster at the moment. No one's using it. The staff who are working on it don't even like it. It's a money pit.
We just even don't know how, it's nothing as simple as you go to openai.com and click the chat GPT button and there you have it, right? Meta is not like that. Like metaverse is not like that anyway. So it's all, again, as you mentioned, it is a money pit. It is just there in name still. Not everyone I know is using it. So I don't know anyone who's using it, right? I think the closest is the Oculus stuff that my nephew uses for playing video games and things of that sort, which again has its own space, I'll admit. But again, on the broader side of things, it just seems like Zuckerberg is definitely struggling. I don't know how they can turn this around, right? AI will definitely. I mean, he did mention AI in that call, but again, how would they integrate it? What they do? Because Facebook sucks. Instagram's just dying to an extent. I mean, the Reels sort of thing is still kind of saving it to an extent. And if TikTok's in danger, then maybe it might still also get back something on it. But
Sorry, on that note, I think there was some, it's very, like this is very vague and whatever, but I was hearing there was like some more talk about the government banning TikTok quite recently. So I think they're leaning towards that angle.
yeah, but then if you want to be a company that changes the world, you can't lean on somebody else's downfall.
No, that was almost just a side point. I'm not saying Meta's looking at it like, all right, let's lobby the government.
But the thing is, I think they are.
Joe Biden, get rid of this stuff.
I think they are, right? I think that's what it feels like, is they're waiting for others to collapse so that then they can kind of
Take the place
and hopefully not end up on a cold fusion video.
They just name like they just rename Instagram like MetaTalk or something.
Or just, I don't know, AI Instagram.
Just all the buzzwords. AI metaverse Instagram. But yeah, I think broadly speaking, these latest rounds of layoffs are again because of interest rates.
Yeah.
Because everyone got overzealous when they were super low. Basically said, hey, you got all the money in the world, let's hire all the staff. And then turned out they weren't really helping or doing much. So just trimming and getting lean, which is probably the right thing to do, because you can tell on a financial sense, because you can tell every time Meta just slashes and lays off people, the stock goes up. So it's kind of, everyone's like, okay, so that means that they're saving money. They're actually thinking about their financial position rather than just hiring like there's no tomorrow and throwing a dartboard at this metaverse idea, hoping that it takes off. So I think Zuckerberg's showing that, you know, is being a little bit responsible, but I think it's got to do more. Either come out with something to show like something amazing for this metaverse, or literally swallow his pride and pivot.
No, for sure. The final topic of the day, the fake photos of the moon apparently from Samsung. Have you been following that at all?
Yeah, I saw Marcus Brownlee's video on it. And I don't know, like maybe I'm thinking wrong, but I'm sure this isn't a new thing. I don't know, maybe I'm thinking of a Chinese brand, or maybe it was Samsung. But yes, exactly the same thing. Like AI would recognize the moon. So for those of you who don't know, the controversy is that if you point a Samsung phone at the moon and zoom into its 100 times or whatever, it will superimpose a already built image of the moon on your image. So it looks like your image is super clear when in fact that's not the real thing. And there was a guy on Reddit who uncovered this by taking a photo of a blurry picture of a moon, and then the Samsung phone recognized it and put extra details on there that didn't exist. So yeah, I do remember that this isn't a new controversy, that this has happened before. So I'm not sure what's going on there.
Okay, so I mean, just because we're talking about it again, what do you think about this whole concept? Because if we take a picture of a faraway building, it's not gonna, I mean, it shouldn't really add more windows or random people out of a balcony or something like that, right? So in this case, it seems to be doing something similar. And if it's adding craters and stuff, maybe something that we left when we visited the moon, just showing up on that image. But jokes aside, what are your thoughts on this whole controversy?
I think it's disingenuous. I do think it's disingenuous, because yes, you can have AI enhancing, AI sharpening of a person's face or a scene, and I think that's fine. But if you're posting a pre-baked image on top of whatever source image you have, I think that's just essentially lying. So I think, yeah, everyone has a right to call Samsung out for that. I don't think it's a good practice at all.
No, I agree as well. I think just that entire thing of using that tech is essentially to sell to the naive that, oh, this is something that's possible.
But not really naive. They did it really sneakily.
True.
If you didn't
Not even
test,
naive, yeah.
No one would know. Yeah.
So true. But I guess more so from the perspective of when they're marketing that side of things, because they did market that side of things heavily, like 100 megapixel or whatever, and then you can zoom in X amount of times and take a really, really clear image. Those things do come at a cost of being disingenuous. So
but the thing is, I don't think they needed to, because I've seen other, not even just photos, but images of the Samsung the newest Samsung with the 100 times zoom, and in good lighting conditions, you can get some crazy shots. I saw a video of this woman who was spying. Obviously, this was like a setup, like she wasn't actually doing this, but there was a guy texting from right down on the other side of this park, and she zoomed in and could read his text. So it's kind of like, or not read the text, but see what he was doing on his phone. But the thing is, like, yeah, you could show stuff like that. People would be amazed, and it's real. You didn't have to do this gimmicky thing. Yes. But then again, Samsung's mobile department has a huge history of gimmicks. I don't honestly, I don't know if you remember the Galaxy S3, like how it had those water droplet sounds for whenever you press the buttons. No. Okay, no. But yeah, they just had like all these quirky, crazy features on their phones, and it was kind of tacky, and this kind of reminds me of the old Samsung, something that they'll do. But anyway, I just think it's overall not great.
Yeah, it's again, just using that for promotion and things like that just feels, but more importantly, who takes the pictures of the moon anymore?
Yeah,
I mean, do you take pictures of the moon? It just always comes out so bad.
I never did.
I mean, sometimes you look at it, and this is the one thing that always sucks. It's like, especially when you drive down Causeway on the way to the city, sometimes the moon's like really nice and big.
Right, when it's big,
and it looks really great from the skyline. And granted, Perth doesn't have the greatest skyline in the world, but it still looks really cool. Yeah. Take out your phone, and then you just try to take a photo, and it's like, oh, it should be good. New camera, new phones, new technology. It's bad. Yeah, it's never the same unless you have a really nice DSLR camera.
Okay, maybe that's a clue. That's probably why they decided to do this as a fake promo thing, because they know that zooming in at nighttime conditions is extremely hard for a mobile camera. So they're like, we can do it, so buy our thing. So maybe that's why.
Yeah, maybe that's why. Look, I'm just going to run by a few comments from our previous episode. Now, first of all, thank you everyone who's been commenting lately. It's been really cool to see the engagement. So please, if you have any questions or something like that, we used to answer to comments in the past, but that kind of slowly died out because of just the timing of these episodes. We try to keep it short. But there were a few comments that we need to kind of address. One was about us trying the AI DJ for Spotify. Have you heard about that or seen that at all? Yeah, we didn't have the time this week, obviously, covering the whole SVB situation, which again was another comment from Ibu Nero, who mentioned that what we think about Silicon Valley and the whole crash. So we of course covered it. But this question came from Andrew Muniz 3201, saying that we should cover it in the next episode and see if we can use the AI DJ for Spotify. So obviously, we couldn't do it this week, so maybe for next week. And I guess when we have the studio, we'll be getting more of a chance to be able to try these things. And it could even be a new segment where we try interesting new AI stuff, because there won't be a shortage of them coming up with so many different AI applications.
Okay, no, I don't want to derail. Go on.
But no, that was it for my.
Okay, I was just going to say, did I tell you about the AI singers that I found?
Singers?
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's this app. Actually, I got it on my laptop here. It is called Synthesizer V Studio, and essentially, it is, I don't know, like these voices that can sing. Essentially, so you put in the piano notes and you type what you want, and then you can like change how it slides across the notes and what notes they are and everything. So yeah, you can make them sing essentially, and you can edit their vibrato and all of this, but it's quite robotic. So if you've heard Porter Robinson, yeah, so it sounds like those voices. But it's like, it's interesting.
So it's usable and not like the screams of the damned.
Yeah, it's very usable. It's not scary. It's usually cute, like that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So yeah. Whenever we think of AI singing, I guess
Screams of the Damned is the first thing. Yeah, it's going to be a running joke forever on this podcast.
Yeah. All right, well, that does it for today. Hope you enjoyed this episode. It was a pretty action-packed one. So we'll see you again soon for the next one. Cheers.